Lake George Battlefield Moments, a production of Lake George Battlefield Park Alliance, preserving our area's incredible history. Here's the president of Lake George Battlefield Park Alliance, John DeNuzzo.
Welcome to Lake George Battlefield Moments. We welcome back Bruce Venter after a long winter in Virginia. He's back in upstate New York, and he's speaking to us today about the subject of his book, The Battle of Hubbardton. Welcome, Bruce.
Thank you, John.
We just passed the anniversary of the Battle of Hubbardton. Can you describe that for us?
Sure. In 1777, the British wanted to split the colonies and to capture Albany and eliminate the rebels in New England. And so General Burgoyne was the British commander. His first job is to capture Fort Ticonderoga, which he does handily. And the American army is forced to retreat. And the retreat line will take them from Fort Ticonderoga and Mount Independence down to Hubbardton, where they'll rest for about a day. The main American army under General Sinclair will continue on to Castleton, Rutland, and eventually Fort Edward to join General Philip Schuyler, the commander of the Northern Department. However, he leaves about 900 men at Hubbardton in what is now called Vermont. They are going to try to hold off a British advance that's coming very rapidly against the American forces. And the advance is led by Brigadier Simon Fraser, who is a good friend of General Burgoyne. He's thought highly of by General Burgoyne. And he takes 850 men, a battalion of grenadiers, a battalion of light infantry, and a couple of companies of his own 24th Foot. And he fights a bloody slugfest at Hubbardton with the Americans. It's about a 3-hour fight. They're firing 60 yards apart. And eventually the Americans are outflanked by a German relief column. You have to remember that in 1777, half of Burgoyne's army was made up of German hirelings, mostly from the Principality of Brunswick, and they're commanded by General Baron von Redesel. And he comes up behind Fraser, and he takes a couple of his best companies of troops, the Jaeger Company, which are the marksmen, and the Grenadier Company, and they will outflank the Americans and cause the Americans to fold, and they will have to retreat. Seth Warner is the American commander of the rear guard, according to Sinclair's orders. And once the action falls apart, Seth Warner will say to his men, in so many words, "Scatter, men, and meet me in Manchester," which is Manchester, Vermont. What happens is that many of these men will fight again at Bennington and at Saratoga. And we all know that Saratoga is the turning point of the American Revolution because it obligates France to come in on the side of the Americans because they have no use for Great Britain. And, of course, we will eventually win the war for independence with the help of the French.
So the action at Hubbardton then was one of the many delays that Burgoyne and the British and the Germans found as they tried to get south to Albany, correct? I mean, is that one of the first halts or stoppages they get?
It's really the first action that they fight. The capture of Fort Ticonderoga is incidental to the whole thing because the Americans couldn't defend the fort. The British were able to get 2 guns up on top of Mount Defiance. At that point, General Sinclair decides that he's getting out of there, so they don't even put up a fight at Ticonderoga. They didn't have enough men to defend the works anyway. And so Hubbardton becomes the first real hotshot battle of the 1777 campaign for Burgoyne.
I know that, we both like a number of historic sites in Vermont. They're well done, well preserved, well cared for. What's your view of the Hubbardton battlefield site?
I only know of one site in Vermont. It's Hubbardton. And it's
you're not going to do another book on another site, huh?
No. It's the only Revolutionary War battle fought in Vermont. Now, when I was writing the book and I sent the manuscript into the publisher, one of the women that was working on the production of the book said, "Well, what about Bennington?" And I had to correct her. She was a young lady, so she may not have had the same kind of history teachers that I'd had. And so I said to her, no, the Battle of Bennington was actually fought in New York. It was part of New York at the time, and it still is. And so the Battle of Bennington's site, the battlefield, is in New York. So that leaves Hubbardton as the only battlefield of the Revolutionary War in Vermont. the people in Vermont love the Hubbardton battlefield. The reason it's so wonderful is because it's pristine. There is no development. It's not like the Civil War in Virginia where battlefields are wiped out by shopping malls. There is nothing up there. You can go up there to the battlefield and stand in 1 or 2 or 3 different spots and view the whole battle and understand it completely because nothing has changed. All the hills and dales are still up there, and Sucker Brook is there where the British came across in the early morning hours of July 7th. So it's a great battlefield.
So I presume they do commemorations there of the Battle of Hubbardton, do they not?
Absolutely, every year, and they've been doing it for years. I mean, I was going to them before I even wrote the book. The commemoration is this weekend. The battle was the 7th, and the commemoration is going to be Saturday and Sunday. That's, if I got my dates right, the 11th and the 12th. Yeah, right. It starts about 10 a.m., and it goes till about 4 or 5, and they get a good number of reenactors there because the reenactors are camping on the original battlefield. In fact, for the Americans, that's actually where Seth Warner's units were camped before the British attacked them, was right where the reenactment is. And then they have Monument Hill where they recreate the battle. They get a good number of British reenactors. And overall, it's great. It's a great place. Yeah.
And your book, The Battle of Hubbardton, which I've read several times.
I hope so. It's great. I was rereading it this weekend because I had to give a talk last night in Washington County. I reread it. I said to my wife, my God, this is really well written. I can't believe it.
Did you know how it was going to end?
I knew how it was going to end, but I was amazed at the way I wrote it. And I hope I can do that for the next book.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if Hubbardton would have been more obscure without your book and your subsequent publicizing of the book and things like that. But what has been the impact of the book? Has there been recognition of Hubbardton to an extent you don't think there was before?
Yes. What happened was there was a man named Colonel Williams who wrote a monograph about the battle and about 1988. And it went out of print about 2014. And the state of Vermont was not going to republish it. So I said to Carl Fuller, who was the site manager up at Hubbardton, I said, Carl, I said, if you show me a few things about the battlefield up on the saddle, that's Sergeant Hill, I said, I think I can do a book on this battle and you'll be able to sell it at the visitor center. And so he was all for it. That's what happened. I went ahead and I wrote the book. It was picked up. It was written for the History Press. So it's a paperback book and it sells for $22, which is a very good price point. They sell it at the visitor center and it sells like hotcakes up there. It's like an ATM machine for me. And then the Journal of the American Revolution, which all of our listeners should subscribe to. It's free. It's online. It's only online. And the editors of the Journal of the American Revolution selected my Hubbardton book as one of the 100 best books on the American Revolution. That was about 6 or 7 years ago. And so I was very pleased with that. And that always helps when you're trying to give a talk or something like that. You put that out there in your bio and people want to come and hear about it and know more about the Battle of Hubbardton. So that's kind of how it's worked.
Now, one last question. Mount Independence, which is another historic site in Vermont, although not the site of a battle in Vermont. Yeah. Do they connect with Hubbardton in terms of their displays, exhibits, and so forth? Are there natural connections between the two sites that the managers run?
Well, they're both connected in the sense that they're both Vermont State Historic Sites, and they come under the same manager for both sites. There's 3 sites. There's Chimney Point, there's Mount Independence, and there's Hubbardton. And so they have a nice museum up at Mount Independence. They have nice trails, and you can figure out where the hospital was and the barracks was and the Star Fort and the Horseshoe Battery. Wonderful hiking trails there. But that's all grown back because in 1777, Mount Independence was denuded. There wasn't a stick of wood anywhere because the Americans had used it to build their structures and to use for firewood. But it's a great place to hike, so I highly recommend that.
Okay, The Battle of Hubbardton is the book by Bruce M. Ventor, published through History Press. How do people get a copy of it, Bruce?
Well, it's on Amazon. It's on Barnes & Noble. It's on the History Press website, and it's sold by the Fort Plain bookstore. Brian Mack, some of our listeners may know Brian. He's the treasurer of the Fort Plain Museum and Historical Site. He's got a wonderful bookstore, and he sells it too. Maybe he'll even give you a discount if you use my name.
I actually believe that there are copies of that at the Lake George Battlefield Park Visitor Center as well. So
I haven't checked yet this year. I know you sold out last year.
It's selling quick, but we be sure
you did
we
restock
replenish. Yes.
Oh, you made my day.
Okay. Well, we like to do that, Bruce.
Yeah.
We'll have Bruce back for the next podcast as well to talk about some of the tours that are upcoming this year, which I think our listener will be very interested in. But Bruce, thanks for coming back.
Thank you very much. Good to be back.
And thanks everyone for being a part of our history.
Lake George Battlefield Moments, a production of Lake George Battlefield Park Alliance, preserving our area's incredible history. For more information or to check out the latest podcast, go to lakegeorgebattlefield.org and listen live on Saturday mornings to Lake George Battlefield Moments on 93.5 Lake FM.